Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host, Raider, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about a couple of conditions that are widely misunderstood in the veteran community. And those two conditions are insomnia and vertigo. Now, what's mostly confusing about the insomnia and vertigo is that they cannot be claimed secondary to another condition. I mean, technically they can be, but what I mean is that they can't be granted secondary to another condition. So they can't get their own separate rating. Like, let's say if you claim insomnia and it's found that the insomnia is due to, tinnitus, service connected tinnitus. Well, normally for any other condition, you would be like, okay, well, I'm going to get it, granted secondary and all my mental health will be, rated separately. But for insomnia and vertigo, that's not the case. So let me pull up the manual for at least insomnia. So when insomnia is identified as a symptom of another disability that is service connected, uh, it should be actually combined with that service connected disability. So, and this is under 38 CFR 4.7, the need to combine conditions together. And so, what happens is that the medical examiner, either you have gotten a private DBQ that says it, or you went to an examination and through your conversation with the VA examiner, they opined that your insomnia or vertigo is due to this other condition. So when that happens, we would combine insomnia with, like, say, tinnitus in this example. Now, why that is bad is due to 38 CFR 4.14, and that's the pyramiding CFR. So, if your insomnia gets combined with tinnitus, tinnitus has a scheduler maximum of 10%. So, all the symptoms that the examiner identified for insomnia on the DBQ essentially get locked under this non mental health condition. And because of 38 CFR 4.14, you can't use those symptoms in any other way. So if you later on get service connected for depression, right, all those symptoms for insomnia can't be applied. So if your total mental health picture looks like you should be 70%, you won't be 70% because some of those symptoms are locked in a non mental health condition. So it's really, really detrimental, especially in the mental health insomnia situation. Now, for vertigo, it's kind of the same thing where it's written almost exactly the same. With the exception of Meniere's disease and TBI, there are a few exceptions to this where Meniere's can be kind of absorb vertigo into it and it not be a bad thing. So Meniere's is about the only exception to this rule, and that's kind of a hearing peripheral vestibular condition that, and I'll just explain Meniere's real quick. So in order to have Meniere's, you can have hearing loss, tinnitus, and vertigo. So how we rate Meniere's is we rate them separately. So we would rate them in a situation of, if I was to look at the symptoms and I granted hearing loss, tinnitus, and vertigo separately, would that add up more than, say, if I rated it under Meniere's at the current symptoms? So Meniere's is the exception to this rule, but the overall rule for vertigo is it cannot be secondary to something else because it will be combined with that thing. So it has the same language where it says, hey, look, if your thing is service connected, if you can establish that it's due to something that's service connected, it should be established for that diagnosis, which this means just combined with that diagnosis. And this has the same kind of bad situation where for vertigo, the symptoms that matter for vertigo are staggering, and dizziness, depending. If you get those locked under something else that doesn't have staggering or dizziness as part of its scheduler criteria, then those symptoms are basically dead. You can't actually, utilize them unless you were to later on get Meniere's disease or something like that, to where you would have some wiggle room. So that's why I said that insomnia is the more detrimental version of this, because there is a little bit more wiggle room with vertigo than there is with insomnia. Now, what happens if you find yourself on the losing side of this? So for whatever reason, you claimed insomnia, you claimed vertigo, and the examiner said, "Oh no, it's due to this other thing," and that's not the way you want to take it. What are your options? Well, if you have evidence in your service treatment records that you experience some symptoms of insomnia and or vertigo, dizziness, whatever the lay statement or lay symptoms are for it, so dizziness, staggering for the vertigo, or tiredness because you were up all night, however it manifests in your service treatment records, what would happen is you could get a different medical examiner, private or VA, and have them try to explain, if the evidence supports it, that the prior examination was erroneous, because it is more likely than not that we call it your primary insomnia or primary vertigo, which means it's not secondary to anything else, was due to service. That's about the only way to claw back these symptoms from being locked under basically a non-compensable way under a different condition. So I just kind of wanted to talk about both of these today to just maybe educate the veteran community on it, because I see a lot of people saying, hey, I've got vertigo, so I'm just going to claim it, secondary to my ear infections or whatever, or insomnia due to tinnitus is the biggest one. Like, I don't understand why people do it, but they do. And it hurts them time and time again. And it's painful to have to grant that, because they think something good is going to happen, and then we usually get 2 or 3 appeals after that for the veteran, in which they're like, hey, look, I wanted this separately rated. And then we have to explain, the manual references that say, the common terminology of, for VA purposes, vertigo can't be secondary to anything else and be separately rated. For VA purposes, insomnia can't be rated secondary to something else and independently. So that's about all I wanted to share with you guys today. So thank you, and Raider out.